What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode. It's Bounce Back Wednesday,
Yep.
everybody. We had a rough weekend down on the bayou, but it's over with. It's Wednesday. We are moving on to College Station and the not so mighty fighting Texas A&M Aggies. We'll talk about that a little bit more as we go. He's Nick Philippich. I'm Austin Eldridge. We're always glad to be with you as we get you set for game number 9 on the season. We are already almost 75% of the way through the regular season. After this weekend, there will be just 3 regular season games remaining. My, how the time flies when you're having fun. And Ole Miss was having a lot of fun up until this past Saturday. It all came crashing down where it normally does in Death Valley when LSU took it to them 45-20. It was not a pretty game by any stretch of the imagination once it got out of the first quarter. Ole Miss did what they've been doing all season, which is take a big lead in the first quarter, 17-3 in this case, only to watch it come collapsing down, and they scored 3 more points for the rest of the game and were outscored by a total of 42-3 once they took that 17-3 lead. So LSU takes the win. Ole Miss drops into a 3-way tie for first place in the SEC West with Alabama and LSU. Ole Miss 7-1. Alabama also just 1 loss. LSU, of course, with 2 losses overall, but 1 conference loss. They are 6-2, 4-1 in the conference. Alabama also 4-1 in the conference. Ole Miss has played 1 less conference game than both of those teams. Nick, it was a rough one to watch on Saturday. Certainly not pleasant to watch the team get manhandled in all facets of the game, really, once that first quarter ended. But you almost in the back of your mind saw it coming in Baton Rouge.
Yeah, well, at first, I was able to be in the press box at Death Valley. And, after the first quarter, I thought, okay, looked pretty good, but I knew obviously there was 3 more quarters to play. And, I wasn't expecting a drought basically for the next 3 quarters. But, we only scored 3 and we let them score, 42 more. Yep. So, it was and definitely, we've seen it this year where, they play 1 good quarter, 2 good quarters, and then, second half they come out and lay an egg, which is what they did against LSU. So, this week I hope we can, come out fast, but, keep the foot on the gas and, really put it to Texas A&M.
Hopefully so. And obviously, Ole Miss can't ever seem to catch a team before they figure it out. They always get them after they figure it out. And Jaden Daniels really came into his own. He looked really good against Ole Miss, unfortunately. And Ole Miss loses by 25 points, their worst, the only loss of the season, but one of the worst losses they've suffered in recent memory. Even worse than the loss they had at Alabama last season. But either way, it's going to happen. It's bound to happen. The only thing I'm going to say, the last thing we're going to say about LSU before we move on, the narrative that the team quit in the middle of that game is nonsense. I can't stand it when I see people say they quit, they laid down, yada, yada, yada. The team did not quit. Okay, we lost A.J. Finley and Troy Brown, who are arguably the 2 best defenders on the team, not to mention leaders in the defensive backfield. You have a tired defense because they were out there a lot because the offense wasn't getting anything done, particularly in the second half. And overall, it was, yes, you could say the scheme was poor. Guys, Ole Miss has personnel for a 3-2-6 defense. It's not going to change. It's just not. It's just how it is right now. And until Ole Miss either changes their recruiting strategy to recruit different personnel to bring in for a different defensive scheme, that's the scheme Chris Partridge runs, and that's the scheme that the defensive personnel are trained, and that is the scheme they are able to play. So I do not foresee that changing unless Ole Miss defense can suddenly learn how to play a completely different scheme between A&M and the bye week. You're not going to see a different offensive scheme. But the team didn't quit. They had a bad game. The roster's 45% brand new. You got a 19-year-old quarterback and a true freshman running back that are leading your offense. A bad game is bound to happen. Unfortunately, it happened on the road at LSU. Bounce back time. You go to College Station this week to take on a struggling 3-4 Texas A&M team, 1 conference win, and they are coming off 3 straight losses, the most recent being on the road at South Carolina at Williams-Brice Stadium, which was rocking the other night, by the way, when the Gamecocks took down the Aggies. Jimbo Fisher struggling a little bit with this mighty number 1 recruiting class that he had. He's got players allegedly smoking weed in the locker room prior to games. He's got you never know. The rumors around that locker room are many. You never know what's actually happening out there. But 3 players are suspended for sure. We know 3 freshmen are suspended for this game for the Aggies. We don't really know which quarterback is going to play, although the last report I saw was that Haynes King will be ready to go or is expected to be ready to go. So I would assume we're going to see Haynes King. This is a A&M team that is not going to want to lose a 4th consecutive game. And if they want any hope of salvaging their season and getting a bowl opportunity, they have to win this game. You could say this is a must-win game for both teams, despite the fact that Ole Miss is a top 15 team with only 1 loss. You can't afford to lose to A&M, who is down going into a bye week before you play Alabama. It's just not a good situation to be in. This is a team, Nick, you've got to beat. There's just no way. There's no other way to put it.
Yeah, and they're inches away from being 2-5 on that field goal against that Arkansas miss that went straight over the upright. That is an inch to the, I don't remember, right or left. They're 2-5. They got beat by Appalachian State. At home. But all the games that they've lost outside of the Mississippi State game have been close. So, they're playing teams close, but I think what sticks out to me the most is they're very young. They have guys that are, in their first collegiate season and, they're kind of beat down. They have a lot of freshmen that play a lot. But they're good. They're good enough to play. But, I think it's definitely, like you mentioned, a game that you have to go win regardless of where you're playing against this A&M team, whether you're at the Vaught or at Kyle Field. It's just a game you have to win. Yeah. After, losing in the fashion you did last week. And like you mentioned a couple of times, you got to bounce back because, you got that bye week and then you got Alabama kind of just sitting there, and that, it's going to be in the Vaught, but, it's Alabama. We all know what they bring. They're going to play you tough 4 quarters. So, I would definitely like to see a win before we have to play Alabama to, kind of boost that confidence, get some things going on defense better. I think last week was without a doubt our best performance on defense. They had a quarterback that was very mobile. I think it was 3 rushing touchdowns he had and 2 passing touchdowns, and he really gave us some problems and weren't really able to get much pressure on him. Yeah. And I'm interested to see whether or not what kind of volume Cedric Johnson will have this week because I think he's a big key to getting to the quarterback because the less time you have or the quicker you get to the quarterback, the less time a DB has to run around with the receiver, the less chance that he gets open, which is kind of what we saw last week against LSU. You got some and David Igbinosun, he's a freshman. He's running around with these guys for almost 4 or 5 seconds, against a Kayshawn Booty and the athletes that they have outside, that they're bound to find a crease and, get open. So I'm definitely more interested in seeing what the defense can do this week. We know what we have on offense.
Right.
And we need Zach Evans back. But other than that, we just we got to bounce back.
Yeah, obviously missing Zach Evans was a huge loss offensively. And then Ulysses Bentley has still not really been available. He played, I think, 1 snap and got maybe a 2-yard gain. Yeah. And that's really all he did. So it was essentially Jackson Dart and Quinshon Judkins last week. Malik Heath did some work, including laying out a guy. But then he had the scary fall there where you're just scared to death that he's hurt. You got to get healthy.
Absolutely.
But Davison had a horrible game defensively last week. It was certainly not his best moment. So you mentioned him on the outside. He's got to bounce back this week. I know he'll be looking to. Lane Kiffin, he talked about it today on the weekly coaches teleconference. He took a little jab at Jimbo and the Aggies, and it was hilarious. Where he was asked about DJ Durkin, who of course was the defensive coordinator here last year. He was asked about Durkin and the attempt to retain him and what they were looking for. And Lane said, well, we tried to keep him because he ran a pretty good defense. We were outbid. And then Lane kind of slipped in. That's a pretty common theme with that program. And he just kept right on going. And it was great. That quote immediately blew up There's articles out about it now. It's all over Twitter. It was hilarious. Lane is the ever-present king of trolling. He's going to get the jabs in when he can.
Absolutely.
I love Texas A&M fans trying to make it out like Lane's paying players and trying to be like, aha, gotcha. Number one, you have like $100 million recruiting class that you just got paid to come to Texas A&M. And number two, it's legal because it's NIL. So that's really bad. Gotcha. That aside, Lane's serious comments were the environment at A&M is what I got to ask him about. And he talked about the fact they played in Death Valley last week will help them going into another hostile environment like College Station. But he also talked about the talent that A&M has. And despite the fact that they're 3-4, they are still a very talented team. We can joke about the recruiting class all they want. The fact of the matter is it was the number one rated recruiting class in the country for a reason. And despite the fact they're struggling, they still have a lot of talent on that team, and you have to be ready for that talent. Now, where A&M has struggled this year is where Ole Miss has struggled the last 2 weeks, running the ball and run defense. Texas A&M through 7 games has only run for 850 yards total. That's it through 7 games of the regular season. By comparison, if you look at Ole Miss, they've rushed for 2,017 total yards. That is a massive difference. The one guy that is getting it done for Texas A&M is Devin Akane. 117 attempts, 661 yards on the ground, and he's rushed for 4 touchdowns. You have to contain Devin Akane. And I may be saying that wrong. I apologize if I am. But Devin Akane is, I believe I'm correct. That's how you pronounce it. And you can't let him get out there and look like Herschel Walker or Barry Sanders or somebody. You've got to contain Devin Akane. If you contain him, then make Haynes King beat you with his arm. We talked about making Jaden Daniels beat you with his arm. They didn't. They let him beat him with his legs. We talked about before the Vanderbilt game, making them beat you with their arm. That worked. It did not work last week against LSU. So if you make Haynes King beat you with his arm, he's thrown 6 interceptions and 6 touchdowns, and he's only thrown for 941 yards. It's kind of been a mix between him and Max Johnson. Make him beat you. Play defense, tighten up. Don't play 10 yards off the receivers on 3rd and 2, but make him beat you. If you can do that, Ole Miss can win this game easily.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I looked, the next after Akane, it's their Max Johnson and Hayes King as far as rushers. And then their next running back has 10 carries this year. And that to me is kind of crazy, especially in the SEC. And, we've known it's been evident the past 2 or 3 games, the tackling has been subpar, to put it nicely. So, I think if we can, tackle this guy, like you said, contain him and, not only just tackle him and get him down to the ground, but kind of punish him a little bit and make him pay, because obviously either he's that good or they don't have another guy that they really trust out there that they can say, hey, let's get this guy a breather and give this guy a couple carries or whatever, So, like you said, I think that'll be the main thing for our defense is to stop the run and make Hayes King beat you with his arm. Like you said, 6 touchdowns, 6 interceptions is about all you really need to know. They're not really – they're scoring I think it's 21 points a game.
Yeah, they're not scoring.
So, if you can – I believe if we can hold them to 21 points, we should be okay. But as we've seen in the past few weeks, we're letting teams, score 30+, and that isn't ideal.
No, not at all. I mean, by comparison, Ole Miss is still scoring 38 points a game despite the dud that they threw up against LSU last week. So they're outscoring A&M per game by 17 points. And you mentioned it. It's very telling when your 2 and 3 leading rushers are 2 quarterbacks. And you're in the SEC. You got a running back and then your 2 quarterbacks, and then your next running back, like you mentioned, has just 10 carries. So it is literally they are riding Devin Akane. That's it. That is their offense. If you contain him, they have not had anything else really this year. I mean, they're averaging 24 points a game or 21 points a game, and Devin Akane has 4 touchdowns. That's 28 points right there just for him. And if you look at A&M's schedule, I mean, they're not putting up a lot of points. He's probably scored half their points. If you look at what they've put up, Sam Houston, they put up 31, 14, 17, 23, 24, 20, 24. They're not scoring that many points.
Right.
Just contain him. I know it sounds so cliche. It sounds like coach speak. It's okay, we get it, contain. But that is literally all you have to do to beat this Texas A&M team. Their defense is not like the star of their show by any means. So if you can just contain that offense, and the other key to the game is you got to score second half points. You can't put up 21st quarter points and then not score again. You got to put up points. Their defense is allowing, for comparison, A&M's only rushed for 850 yards. They've given up 1,300 rushing yards. They've given up almost 1,300 passing yards. Now, they have passed for over 1,500 yards, but that's between two quarterbacks plus a little bit from the rookie we saw last week. So that number's a little skewed because you've got several different quarterbacks putting all those numbers up. Whereas if you look at Ole Miss and you look at Jackson Dart on his own has thrown for over 1,700 yards. So Jackson Dart by himself has thrown for more yards than 3 Texas A&M quarterbacks combined. So it's a very simple game plan this week. Don't let the crowd get to you. Stop Devin Akane and don't score all your points in the first quarter.
Right. Yeah, and I think, you mentioned it, that, not letting the environment get to you at Kyle Field. And I'm not sure, I've never been to Kyle Field, and before last weekend had never been to Death Valley. But I feel like our team handled the environment, the crowd noise pretty well. Yeah. And I'm not sure how much louder it'll be at Kyle Field. They haven't played there since the end of September. The last 3 games have been played on the road. I think it was Mississippi State, Alabama, and then South Carolina. So, they're ready to get back home. We'll see how loud they can be. Maybe we can they'll lose their voice at their midnight yell that they do. And but yeah, it could turn to be a problem, but it wasn't as much as a problem as I maybe foresaw this past weekend at LSU, the crowd.
Yeah, it's fitting that we're playing Texas A&M at home on Halloween weekend because they are a cult after all. So we'll see how that goes with the midnight yell and all that weirdness. Before we go any further, you guys love our sponsors. I know you do because I've seen posts and everything else about these beautiful socks from deadsoxy.com. Check this out. I've got all the visuals for you tonight. I've got the beer showers. I've got the Matt Corral socks. I've got the Archie Manning stripes. I've got the Sharks. You name it, we got it over here. Nick's got a few pairs. He showed you a couple weeks ago. I hope you guys took advantage of the score sale that we had a couple weeks ago after the Vanderbilt game, because if you didn't, you missed out. 52% off your entire order. But guess what, guys? If you use the code RebelWalk at deadsoxy.com anytime, you always get 25% off site-wide all season long. It doesn't have to be after a win. It doesn't have to be after a loss. Guess what? Ole Miss lost last week. You still get 25% off site-wide at deadsoxy.com if you use the code RebelWalk. Go get you some. These are – you guys know it if you've got them. These are soft. These are comfortable. I know these aren't open yet, but I trust me, I know. I've worn Dead Soxy socks. These are wonderful. They're quality, and they send you a handwritten note with your order. How cool is that? This isn't some hyped up little thing. You don't just get a little order receipt in there. They send you a handwritten note with your name on it telling you how glad they are to have done business with you. It doesn't get any better than that. Go to deadsoxy.com. Use the code RebelWalk. Anytime, get 25% off site-wide. And then while you're doing that, when you get done buying your socks, and be sure and wear them when you come to the vault next time, head over to hottytoddytents.com and be sure and show off those Dead Soxy socks while you're tailgating in a Hotty Toddy tent. These guys are awesome. They're going to help you with every detail. All you got to do is check out and then fold your chair up. I say it every week. Check out and fold your chair up when you're done. They do all the rest. They send you your email. They send you your map. They send you your location. They set it up for you. They tear it down for you. All you got to do is buy it, and then all you got to do is fold your chairs up when you're done tailgating so they know you're done with your spot and they can come clean it up. HottyToddyTents.com. These things are going fast. Alabama game is not just a football game. We got baseball stuff happening at halftime honoring the national champion Ole Miss Rebels baseball team. Also, national champion, Ole Miss Rebels baseball team. Just a reminder to everybody who's watching, we won a national championship in baseball. They're going to honor those guys at halftime of the Alabama game. Tickets are going fast, if not gone already, and that means the tents are going fast too. You need to get on there, check them out, be ready, and be ready for the Egg Bowl too, because you know those are going to sell out quick here in a few weeks. HottyToddyTents.com, DeadSox.com. We love our sponsors. We thank them very much for being a part of our shows. All right, Nick. We talked about several keys to the game, and we've beat the dead horse with stopping the run, which has been the Achilles heel for Ole Miss the last couple of weeks. On the offensive side of things, yes, we need to score points, but it goes beyond that. The Lane Kiffin said this week, and I think everything Lane says is rat poison to an extent. He's not going to give away his game plan. He did mention that he's not planning on using Jackson Dart as much in the run game. I don't see Lane Kiffin giving away his game plan to all these defenses and letting them know they don't have to prepare for Jackson Dart running the football anymore at all for the rest of the season. But the play calling does have to improve a little bit. We're going to have to figure out ways to adjust in game. That is probably my biggest key to the game is adjust. Adjust to what the defense has given you. Take what the defense has given you. And more so, along with that, protect your quarterback. Jackson Dart didn't have time to think all week last week against LSU. So if you're going to score more points, you're going to have to protect Jackson Dart. And your offensive line is going to have to play better. I think those two things might even be bigger than stopping Devin Akane, although that is certainly your biggest key defensively. It doesn't matter how much you stop him if you're not doing the things you need to do offensively.
Yeah, right. You mentioned it. It doesn't really matter what you do. I think a lot was, what you do whenever you're down 2 or 3 scores on offense is pretty limited. You've got to throw the ball, and we run the ball best. So it kind of puts us in a corner to say, when we're down that much, and don't have, you can't keep running the ball 2 or 3 times a drive, and letting the clock milk and so yeah, I think the offense was definitely, and it's a team game. The offense was in a bad spot because of, the points that the defense was giving up. So, I think being able to have that, even flow, I guess you could say, between the offense and defense, a little bit of give, a little bit of take, because you can't let someone score 45 points and expect an offense with one of your 2 top 10 running backs probably in the country out. And then you're, like you said, 19-year-old quarterback. And then, you got some other guys banged up. Offensive line has been up and down all year. You can't, ask them to go out and score 46 points, at Tiger Stadium. It's almost unheard of. So, I definitely think that there's got to be, a little bit more continuity there with the offense and the defense.
Yeah, no doubt. And the other thing, we talk about it every week, Ole Miss has run 157 more plays than Texas A&M. Texas A&M's run 429 plays. Ole Miss has run 586. That is a massive difference. Ole Miss is going to run more plays. There is a con to that, and we saw it last week. If you run a bunch of plays but you don't do anything with those plays, your defense is going to get right back out on the field, and the defense is going to get worn out, and they are going to take advantage, particularly because Texas A&M, they don't run as many plays, and they're going to keep your defense off or on the field, rather, for a much more extended amount of time, despite the fact their time of possession overall is less than Ole Miss's time. I take that back. They're even on time of possession. So there we go. So the time of possession, 320 for A&M, 318 for Ole Miss. So they run less plays, but they keep the ball for the same amount of time possession. So it kind of evens out if you're not playing good defense. So you have to be aware of that and understand if you're going to be a high-octane offense, you better get first downs.
Put the right gas in it.
You gotta have the right gas in your car. That's right. Great analogy. Because you put diesel in a gas burning engine, you're done. It's over with. So Ole Miss has got. I hope that they can find the balance a little better this week because, and that was everybody's concern all season long was what would the balance really look like when the schedule got tough. and last week it didn't look good.
Right.
The one thing I do like that Lane Kiffin did this week is he pulled out the Kentucky tape for his defense to show them, to remind them what they can be against a good team, what they are capable of against a good team. Ole Miss held Kentucky to 19 points and had 2 crucial fumble recoveries, including the game-winning one at the end of that game. We know what this defense can do, and Kentucky's not a slouch. They're not a bad team. So we know what they can do. They just have to stay focused and keep their head in the game. It's really that simple.
Yeah, I agree. And another thing about last week's defensive performance, we didn't have a takeaway. It's really tough. Most of the time, whichever team wins the turnover battle will normally win the game. And outside of some weird, fluky game, and not that I'm not sure an interception or a fumble recovery late in the game would have made a big difference. But, getting those turnovers definitely gives the defense some confidence saying, hey, we can take this ball away and give it to our offense and put up some points. That wasn't the case last week, because both were having some, struggles late in the game. But yeah, I think, just being able to play a full 4 quarters, I think, which I don't think you can correct me if I'm wrong. We haven't seen the team do all year. No. It's either been the first half, against the first, 3 games of schedule, the good first half, and you can't blame them for, kind of laying down in the second half against those teams. It just happens, you got 18 to 21-year-olds, it's not easy. And then you have the Vanderbilt game where, you come out and lay egg in the first half and then you put it to them in the second half. So I think that's really the defense and playing a full game for me is the biggest things I'm looking at this week. Playing a full 4 quarters, whether it's mediocre, not mediocre, but average 4 quarters instead of, a really, really good first quarter and then really, really bad third and fourth quarter. I'd rather play an average first, second, third, fourth, first, second, third, and fourth quarter versus, the up and down, just some consistency.
This has got to be productive. You've got to be productive the whole game. Yeah. Ole Miss hasn't been productive. Maybe Georgia Tech, but you can't put a lot of stock in that because Georgia Tech's not a good football team, or at least they weren't back then. And obviously Central Arkansas is an FCS team, so you can't really put much in that one either. So productive the entire game. Put it all together in all 3 phases for an entire game. If Ole Miss puts everything together, they are going to be tough to beat from anybody. And that's not being a homer to say that. They have the talent to be as good as anyone else, but they have to put it together. And that young talent has to put it together, and you can't make mistakes, and you can't get called for 111 penalty yards in a game. You're never going to win games like that. Now, granted, some of those calls were horrific, but you can't put the game in the hands of the officials. You just can't do it. So you have to play smart. Quit committing stupid, sloppy holding penalties. If you're a receiver, that has nothing to do with the play out on the edge. That's happened several times. Just stuff like that. You got to keep your head in the game and be productive.
Right.
All right, Nick. So it's prediction time. We were both obviously very wrong with our predictions last week. So this week, I feel a little bit more comfortable than I felt with LSU, but it's still a road game at Texas A&M, and not to mention a desperate Texas A&M.
Right.
What do you got?
After last week, and after the last 2 weeks, the way the defense is playing, I've kind of been giving in the benefit of the doubt. I'm gonna say 35-30, Ole Miss.
35-30. Okay, I like that. A little cautious optimism.
Yeah.
I do agree. I think that last week was a wake-up call, if there ever was one. It was not. I think it could actually be good for the team to have suffered a humiliating loss like that and understand what it feels like to get boat raced and realize you played a bad game in all facets after that first quarter. It is going to be a night game at last, the first night game of SEC play, 6:30 prime time in College Station, so that makes things a little harder. But the last time Ole Miss played Texas A&M in prime time in College Station worked out pretty well, if I'm not mistaken.
2014 after we beat Bama.
Yeah. So I'm going to go Ole Miss. With the way the offense is played, I'm a little leery of giving them 40-plus just on the road against A&M. I'll give them 38. I think Ole Miss puts it together a little better. They play a better 4 quarters after that beat down. They're going to put up 38. Devin Akane worries me a little bit just because the
Yeah.
defense has certainly not been good the last 2 weeks on the ground. So I think Texas A&M is going to score. But Ole Miss, I think, puts it together. They have a much better game. I'm going to say 38-24. Ole Miss beats Texas A&M on the road in Aggie land. Again, 6:30 p.m. kickoff, the first night game of SEC play and only the second night game of the year, with the first one being against Central Arkansas way back in week 2. That game will be on the SEC network, so you can tune in there if you're not going to be a road reb down in College Station. And then, of course, Ole Miss will finally have a bye week, much needed, before Alabama after this game. All right, so Nick, your prediction 35-30. Mine was 38-24. Again, 6:30 p.m. kick on the SEC network, and we will have all the updates for you as usual over at the Rebel Walk. He's Nick. I'm Austin. They're Dead Soxy and HottyToddyTents.com. Always check them out and be your best Rebel fan. Stay behind these kids, guys. Last week was brutal. Don't give up on them. We've got a very important game coming up this weekend, so stay behind them, root for them, get with this team, will them to victory, and let's hope for an 8-1 start to the season after this week. Until next time, have a great night, everybody. Hotty toddy, go Rebels, and let's beat some Aggies this weekend.